I can't believe it, you all. Like 3 weeks ago, I got to the season 3 finale and Ted's proposal, and I pointed out how the events of the finale point clearly to the many ways in which Theodore Evelyn Mosby sets his relationships up for failure and ends up disappointing these women and ultimately himself. And I stated it as well in that video that I will just be waiting for his wedding with Stella to not pan out because how he arrived at that proposal and his actions leading to it did not a these two are going to end up happily married make. So imagine my surprise when in episode five whole ass episodes, just 5 episodes after the most rushed proposal ever, and 4 episodes after Stella said yes, these two were already speed running to the aisle. And I'm watching the show constantly shouting, Ted, what on earth are you doing at my TV? Only for his ass to be left at the altar. Actually, technically, he didn't even get to the altar. He got a note in his room just as he was about to head to the altar, which some people might think is even worse than arriving at the altar. And honestly, I would agree with them on that. But anyway, Stella dumps Ted and bounces away with Tony, her ex, and the father of her child. And whilst the narrative wants to convince us that Stella is to blame for how that all panned out, I am sorry, y'all. If you were paying any attention to the signs that came before, I think Ted Mosby holds some responsibility for how his non marriage played out. And I will like us to consider that in this video. Now, please note you are allowed to disagree with me. Matter of fact, I welcome it. What I would say, however, is that I want you to watch this video with an open mind. Listen to and consider the point I'm making and then share your objections, if you have them, to what I've said. Because I'm sure that there probably exists some Ted fans in the wilder world who believe that he had no responsibility whatsoever in how his non marriage to Stella panned out. But if this is your first time finding my channel and you have no idea what this video is about and what I'm alluding to, hello, I'm Nori and welcome to my How I Met Your Mother video series, where I am at the moment documenting my first time ever watch of the show while sharing my thoughts as I go along in a stream of consciousness style where I talk about these characters and their choices, try to analyze their behavior and make guesses about my expectations based off of my thoughts on how things are progressing or what I learn with every new episode I get to watch. I will like to reiterate that this really is my first time watching this show, and I have so far been able to stay away from discussions about the show and its characters. So, this is a blind reaction for a series that I know finished airing years ago, and I am only getting into it now. And from what I have gathered, those of you who have been watching my How I Met Your Mother video series do enjoy watching me guess my way in the dark. As such, I would ask that you please continue to not drop any spoilers in the comments. I really appreciate all that you've done so far in ensuring that I maintain my spoiler free reaction. If you do want to say something that addresses a point I made, but that veers into spoiler territory, just give the spoilers ahead warning with a bunch of asterisks so I don't accidentally get spoiled and can ignore that comment, whilst other subscribers or non-subscribers who are watching my videos can interact with your comments and you all can chat about how right or wrong I am and what I have missed or noticed in the process of watching the show. And for those keeping track, I have currently watched up to season 4, episode 6. And if this is your first time stumbling on one of these videos, kindly note that I do have a format style where I split the video into 3 parts. The first is the intro, followed by the synopsis, and then my actual thoughts. As such, I always put in timestamps to help you with navigating the video as you so choose. Of course, before I get into the synopsis part of the video, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And I would like to say a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, How I Met Your Mother Season 4, Episode 5, titled Shelter Island starts with Marshall, Lily, and Barney chilling at McLaren's when Ted and Stella show up. When Ted and Stella show up, Stella is upset because since she was young, she had always had a dream about what her dream wedding would look like. And now her sister is basically copying Stella's dream wedding, specifically the location, Shelter Island, and the time, sunset. The difference, though, is that Stella's sister is a vegan, something that Stella and Ted definitely do not subscribe to. And to further drive this home, Ted decides to order the lamb while they're at lunch to spite Stella's sister and inform Stella that they absolutely must beat her sister for the better wedding award. Stella agrees, but also expresses a wish that her sister's wedding crashes and burns. And you know what they say: be careful what you wish for. Stella's wish ends up coming true as her sister's wedding ends up getting cancelled when said sister's fiance decides to run off with another woman. Foreshadowing. Stella's sister, whose name is Nora, immediately starts digging into a piece of steak. Turns out that the vegan lifestyle she was on was all for a man. Hell, she even gave up wearing makeup and showering for him. Ew. Ew. And she also stopped shaving her armpits. Nora, though, is also equally as upset because now her wedding is cancelled and she's stuck with everything she had paid for and can't get her deposit back. Now, this is the point where future Ted mentions to his kids about a relationship getting to the point when you're perfectly in sync with your partner, to the point that you can read each other's minds. And so when Nora makes the statement and he and Stella look at each other, Ted is convinced that they are both agreeing to the same thing, that they are on the same wavelength. Problem, though, is that Stella's thoughts are skewing more to she and Ted picking up Nora's wedding plans and basically substituting it into their wedding. Ted, though, thinks that they were merely agreeing on paying for Nora's dinner, and thus this great case of miscommunication, which hints to how things would eventually play out for Ted and Stella's upcoming nuptials, ends up resulting in Ted and Stella's wedding being moved to 3 days from the dinner, which was meant to be Nora's wedding day. Because Ted leans into Stella's words about wanting spontaneity, which is something that her ex, Tony, who happens to be Lucy's dad, never really did. Ted, who wants to be not Tony in this situation in Stella's life, agrees. Future Ted, however, mentions what the moral for the episode is, which is to absolutely not invite an ex to your wedding. Which is important to note because guess who is invited to Ted's wedding? Robin. Now, Lily notices that Barney, strangely enough, seems very happy about Ted's upcoming nuptials. When she presses him about it, he admits that it's all part of his plan to have sex with Robin again, as he believes that Ted's wedding would create the perfect background to his seduction of Robin. Lily doesn't think that Barney stands a chance, as she is convinced he would not be able to resist all the other women who would be all over him during said wedding, since they all know that Barney has a thing for hooking up with bridesmaids at weddings. Now, on the day before the wedding, Marshall, Lily, Barney, and Ted all arrive at Shelter Island, and Marshall, Lily, and Barney are horrified to discover that not only would there not be meat. Remember, this wedding was put together when Nora was on her vegan kick. But there would also not be any alcohol, which is terrible news for Barney, who needs alcohol in his must seduce Robin plan. Unfortunately for him, the bad news just continues to come because Stella, who is now being informed by Ted that Robin is coming to the wedding, insists that that cannot happen as she thinks having an ex at their wedding will spark weird and unresolved issues that might reignite the spark when the wedding rolls around. And even though Ted tries to say that he and Robin are only just friends, and hell, they've already done their hookup post breakup during the Slapsgiving episode, Stella refuses to budge. Ted then suggests that to keep things equal, he doesn't mind inviting Tony to the wedding, which Stella still disagrees with. Now, Ted heads back to meet his friends and gives them the news. Marshall agrees with Stella that Robin shouldn't be present, and Barney, who needs Robin there for his great seduction, insists that Ted must invite Robin. Lily, who is the deciding vote, insists that the bride gets the final say. At this point, Barney offers to call Robin, who, by the way, is in Japan because she had accepted a job offer as an English speaking newscaster and was just about to leave for the airport to start heading over for the wedding. Barney, rather than mention the truth about her disinvite to said wedding, tells her to have a safe trip and then informs the others that, oops, he wasn't able to get through to Robin, drawing the conclusion that she was probably already on her way. This therefore means that things are about to escalate. But Marshall suggests a solution. If Ted is able to step in and fix one of Stella's freakouts about the wedding, it would be better positioned, it would be perfectly positioned to slot in the mention of Robin's arrival in a way that Stella would be in a happier mood to receive the news. And sure enough, an opportunity soon arises. Tony, Stella's ex, is insisting on not releasing Lucy, their daughter, to come over to be present for Stella's wedding to Ted. Ted immediately sets out to confront Tony so he can have him release Lucy, which he knows would make Stella very happy. Unfortunately, during the course of the conversation, Ted ends up inviting Tony to the wedding, to Stella's horror, who is upset at Tony's presence, only for things to be even more agitated when Robin shows up. Ted and Stella get into an argument, and Stella suggests that Ted speak with Tony and she speak with Robin so they can both send the other one's ex home. Ted, though, suggests that they switch instead, i.e., he talked to Robin and she talked with Tony, a situation that future Ted informs his children would ultimately change reality. Because as one can guess, the conversations don't work out quite the way Ted had hoped. Like, sure, Robin agrees with Stella that it is weird for her to be at Ted's wedding, especially because she doesn't actually think what Ted is doing is a good idea. She believes that he's rushing and that as someone who is as romantic as he is, deserves to have an amazing end to his quest for the one. With the wedding he's always desired instead of this one is settling for, that is basically someone else's repurposed wedding. Plus, she had always hoped that should she ever change her mind about wanting to get married and having kids, she had hoped that Ted would be there and maybe something would rekindle between them. Ted, though, is upset about this and walks away, leaving Robin feeling sad as she goes to see Barney at his hotel room. Except Barney is being Barney and has already hooked up with not with just one, but two women at the wedding. And so Robin walks away, and Barney is clearly upset at himself and his non existent self control. Ted, meanwhile, goes to go see Stella, but finds a letter waiting for him. Turns out Stella has walked away, effectively leaving Ted at the altar esque to be with Tony. Tony, who it turns out Stella has not completely gotten over, as all her objections about having an ex at the wedding wasn't really about Robin, but instead about her own ex, who she hasn't quite gotten over. The end. Now, like I stated at the start of this video, about 3 weeks ago, I pointed out that the issues I had with Ted's rush proposal to Stella, the fact that one, they had only been dating for a couple of months at that point, and Ted's dating history with her, which basically boiled down to him pressuring her into getting into a relationship with him, spilling her secrets to his friends because he refuses to protect the vulnerable moments she shared with him, and who, when he got the wild idea that things were moving too fast just because she had invited him to a wedding that was 6 months into the future, broke up with Stella only for a near-death situation to lead to him reconsidering, and he then proposed to Stella after deciding that she's the one he loves and he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. Now, in that video, I mentioned that Ted's consistent MO in his past relationship has always been his insistent need to be carried away by his emotions at any given time and react in the most inane of ways when he thinks that the women he's in love with are slipping through his fingers. He does this with Victoria. Days before Victoria is meant to leave, she and Ted had already had that conversation and agreed that they couldn't make long distance work. But Ted, when he's carried away by the emotions born from him saying goodbye to her, makes the suggestion that he and Victoria give long distance a try after all. And she says yes. Now, here is the thing. As someone who has attempted long distance before, I can categorically tell you that it is not easy. dealing with missing your partner for days on end, trying to figure out a way to make time zones work for the both of you, because no matter how much you try, you both would always have to deal with the fact that one person would be half asleep when you all are chatting at a time when the other person is probably getting ready for work slash for their day. That is just the way it is. And whilst long distance doesn't always work, the reason why it works for some couples is because they are both clear on where they stand, on what toll it will take on them, and have clear discussions and strategies to make it work. It's not something that they just jump into thoughtlessly. Ted Mosby, the romantic that he considers himself to be, isn't someone that is going to do that, because his characterization has always consistently been someone who flies by the seat of his pants into his romantic entanglements. With that being the type of person that he's written to be, it makes sense that he isn't the type that would really think things through. And we see this happen throughout the major relationship he's had on the show so far. A sudden off the cuff, spur of the moment suggestion to Robin when she says that, oh, what if she wants to relocate to Argentina for work? And Ted immediately going that sure thing, he's down for doing that. He can quit his job and head there to be with her, and they can have their life together, inclusive of kids, affirms that. Like, sure, we know that it's just a brief wish, and Ted and Robin don't end up following through on that or even consider it for a long period of time. But the clear reason why that scene is the way it is and plays out the way it did is because the writers wanted to make it categorically clear that when Ted gets into his feelings, he doesn't stop to think. He reacts, he acts. And whilst that can be romantic when you're dating and trying to think of something to make your partner's day, it's a whole different ball game when it turns to marriage. And we see this with how things played out with Stella. Because if we have established from the very beginning that Ted is a romantic, and even Robin reminds him of this fact at the wedding when she's trying to convince him that he's making a big, terrible mistake, which did I side eye the writers for working in the old Robin still wants Ted and hopes that should she ever want to get married with kids in the mix, then she hopes Ted would still be available bullshit? Yes, I did. That was utterly unnecessary and had me screaming because, God, it makes zero sense other than being some sort of fulfillment fantasy for Ted. Anyway, sorry I got distracted. As I was saying, the characterization has always been to position Ted as this romantic figure whose spur of the moment choices and decisions are driven by him being a romantic. And so, as the audience, we are meant to pause when the show actively throws several red flags as we march our way down to Stella and Ted's wedding. The first, of course, being the fact that he proposed to her on the very same day that he had first broken up with her. Ted, as a character, tends to go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye, and nothing shows this better than that proposal. How on earth do you go from, I'm sorry I broke up with you because I caught cold feet with what our relationship status would be, say, 6 months from now, to let's get married? All in the space of a single day? Make it make sense. And before anybody says it's because he's romantic, I would like to point out that there is absolutely nothing romantic about Ted's proposal to Stella. There was zero thought or planning that went into it. I would like to point out that there is absolutely nothing romantic about Ted's proposal to Stella. There was zero thought or planning that went into that. And if that didn't clue you in into the fact that their relationship was definitely not going to get that happy ending, I don't know what would have. For a romantic like Ted, spontaneity doesn't mean losing the magic. And in that proposal, where he chases her down to the playhouse where she's with her daughter and fails, keyword here being fails, to even get the ring he wanted from the claw machine. And instead, he makes his proposal to Stella with a giraffe. How in the world is that in any way remotely connected to the romantic that Ted has been painted as all this while? Ted and Stella's entire marriage run felt more like it was all predicated on this fear that Ted has that if he doesn't lock things down with Stella, he wouldn't get this chance of a ready made family that he wants with her. And I know this probably sounds like self help, new age stick, but it is the truth. When you work from fear, you end up driving away the very thing that you want. It's like he didn't want more time to play out with regards his relationship with Stella because of his fear that it might lead to another breakup. And so rather than return to the status quo of them dating, he pops the question. Or he didn't want more time for a longer engagement to play out between him and Stella. And so when she suggests taking on her sister's marriage plans, Ted is okay with it. And before you come on and say, but Noria, that is Cap, the one who wanted their wedding moved up to help her sister, whose fiance broke up with her and ran away with someone else days before their wedding, is Stella. Ted was perfectly fine with their wedding holding on to the actual dates that they had initially planned. It was Stella that rushed things. I will say that yes, you are right about that. But this leads me to something I'd stated in my other video about why Ted's relationships keep failing and how he continues to set his relationship to fail. Ted Mosby tends to subsume his own interest and wants in what the women is interested in want. And we see this especially pop up with his relationship with Stella. Like I said in that video, just that brief moment when he finds a self help book in Stella's office and reads it in order to find a moment of connection with her. It says a lot. The fact that one, he does this with the hope of getting Stella to agree to date him, even though prior to that point, she had told him she doesn't date her patients. But like I said in that video, I can understand picking up a hobby or an interest because it's something someone you likes and you hope that you can find common ground as it pertains to that. My problem, however, is the fact that Ted never said his mind in that scene. Instead, it camouflaged his thoughts so that it reflected what he thought Stella wanted. When he thought Stella liked the book, he had only high praises for the book. The minute Stella mentioned that she thought the book was basically trash, he immediately switched his tone and even pretended like it didn't belong to him. And I remembered watching that scene and mentioning it in the video that we are meant to take away from that moment. What we're meant to take away from that moment was the fact that Ted is willing to inconvenience himself and lie about what he wants or desires, lie about who he actually is, all for the sake of being with the woman he wants. And that is both dangerous to those women and to Ted himself, because authenticity and honesty is important in a relationship. And this ends up shining quite clearly in the events leading to and even on the day of the almost wedding with Stella as well. The fact that not once in his conversation with her does he mention that, you know what, love, I do not think it's a cool idea for us to just take over this wedding that was personalized for your sister and turn it into ours, even though I know you want to do it to help her. But it's not something I am comfortable with, speaks volumes. A marriage is a partnership. And the fact that nowhere in that does Ted bring up the fact that this is not the wedding he wants or desires or had even dreamed of says a lot. I mean, for someone who spent the time when he and Stella were eating with Stella's sister and her fiance, putting down his foot that he isn't a vegan and ordering lamb, Ted having a wedding with zero alcohol and no meat to be had is the very antithesis of who he is, and was the immediate foreshadowing in that episode that the wedding was most certainly not going to happen. The wedding wasn't anything that Ted wanted, but because Stella wanted to help her sister, Ted rolled along with it. And I know the instinctual desire is probably to say that, well, that proves how much of a good guy Ted is. And to that, I would say, no, that is a red flag that shows that nothing in their marriage would be equal. And Ted is so desperate to marry Stella that is willing to close his eyes and shut down any objections he might have in order to do so. Ted is doing the one thing he did back when they first met and he was pursuing her. He changed himself and put his own needs and desires on the back burner to be this version of him that isn't real, just to make himself appealing to Stella. And that does not a healthy marriage make. You know what else doesn't and would not make a healthy marriage? The fact that Theodore Evelyn Mosby knows absolutely nothing about Stella, this woman he claims to love and wants to marry. I repeat, they had only been dating a couple of months before Ted popped the question. It was too rushed. Marshall, Lily, and Robin were right in that assessment in their failed intervention that they never ended up holding. Like, let us be real. How can Ted claim to love Stella, want to marry her, and have zero idea about what she wants? Well, the reason is pretty simple and shows even more of the cracks that's already always been present in their relationship. And this doesn't apply only to Stella, mind you. This has been a pretty consistent thing with Ted, as I've mentioned in previous videos as well. Theodore Evelyn Mosby doesn't really listen to what these women is interested in, want, or are telling him at the time. He only pays attention to what he wants to hear and interprets their wants and objections in line with what he once. It's why, for example, it could have been dating Stella for months and got engaged to her and yet doesn't know life threatening information like what her damn allergies are. Like that shit wasn't he. Look at silly Ted. He didn't know Stella was deathly allergic to peanuts. It's holy shit. Ted has no idea what Stella is allergic to and they're getting married. What the fuck? She could have died. He doesn't know any of her interest or hobbies. He doesn't know what her favorite color is. He doesn't even know the color of her eyes. Like, those are red flags galore. It's confirmation that either Ted isn't paying attention anytime Stella is talking about the things that matter to and interest her, or he and Stella aren't even having any of these conversations, which is even worse. Whichever the case, this is the woman he wants, he claims he wants to marry. Clearly, she can't be his one, because if she was, I don't know, Ted, wouldn't you at least know what color her eyes are with the amount of time you would otherwise have spent looking into them? And then there's a whole bit of conflict on whether or not Ted should move to New Jersey or Stella and Lucy should move to NYC. It falls into this bit. First, Ted tries to pretend that he's always been okay with New Jersey, and it falls on his friends being all like, dude, you hate New Jersey. Here is a million and one things that prove that you've always hated New Jersey. For him to admit to himself that, yes, you know what, he does have strong New Jersey hate. But then he says it's all temporary. After all, Stella and Lucy would be moving to Manhattan to live with him after they are married, until, of course, Stella bursts that bubble and laughs in his face about how ludicrous the idea of her moving to NYC is. And firstly, the fact that he and Stella didn't have a serious conversation about where they would live and how their lives would intersect says a lot about the state of their upcoming marriage and their relationship. The fact that he couldn't read Stella's sarcasm on how Manhattan, specifically Ted's apartment, isn't a place where she wants to raise her kid says a lot about their relationship. The fact that Ted didn't even consider that Stella might not want to uproot a 7-year-old from her school, her friends, and the life she already has in New Jersey shows how he is not thinking like a parent, which, to be fair to him, he wasn't at that point, but which, let us be real, he was about to become one upon marrying Stella. And when he has that big fight with Stella, he eventually concedes that, you know what, he's okay with moving to New Jersey. Now, this ties back to my earlier point about Ted forcing himself into becoming someone else for the sake of the woman he's with, because Ted Mosby does not like New Jersey, and his capitulation still holds a world of hurt and resentment. And the reason why we know this is because when he finds out that Stella is heading over to Tony's apartment in season 4, episode 6, and he and the rest of the McLaren's 5 all hop into the taxi so Ted can confront her, he's all calm for most of it until he realizes that Stella now considers Tony's apartment home. And that is what sends him over the edge, that she was willing to move from New Jersey to New York for Tony, but not for him. That is the confirmation that we get that Ted was just pretending to be okay with the decision to move to New Jersey. His heart wasn't really in it. And this is quite similar to the issue that Marshall had posed to Stella when he figured out that she didn't actually like Star Wars. In that moment, Ted only heard and saw what he wanted to hear and see, and was so relieved that Stella seemingly liked his favorite movie that he didn't question it further. Marshall is the one who notices and asks if Stella is actually willing to pretend for the rest of her married life that she likes this movie, to which she says yes. And whilst I consider that a big deal, you know what I think is a bigger deal than pretending to like a movie? Pretending to like a whole ass city for the rest of your married life. Like, that shit is wild. Now, I am sure there are people watching this video who are probably about to go on a rant about how, well, Stella is evil for walking away from Ted and blah, blah, blah. But I'm sorry, events leading up to her walking away was clear for me, at least, that theirs wasn't a marriage that would work, that would even happen, because I am team Lucy. That child deserves better than having her family torn apart again when her mother divorces Ted. And you know there would have been a divorce in their future. Like, let's be real, those two were not compatible. And for those who are about to say that, well, Stella missed out on a great guy, I'm more meh about that. I don't think she and Ted were a good fit, as I've already highlighted in this video. Now, do I think that Stella would probably regret getting back together with Tony? Absolutely. Tony is a certified deadbeat. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that is going to change. He has shown Stella from the onset that he isn't a trustworthy partner. And the only reason why he decided he wanted back in Stella and Lucy's life was because Stella was getting married and would soon be out of his reach. That does not scream of a healthy relationship. So, yes, I do think that she would probably regret getting back together with Tony. And maybe because of her regretting things with Tony, she might be filled with the what ifs of her relationship with Ted and what could have been. But even if the show ends up going that route, because let's be real, the show would always try and paint Ted in the best light and make him out as this dream man that all these women must regret missing out on. And yet, even with that, I still think that Stella made the right decision and choice walking away because the two of them were absolutely incompatible with each other. But yeah, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video. If you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others might find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you on Monday with a new video. Until then, do remember obsessing over the things you love. Perfectly valid coping mechanism.